Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next installment of The Mouse Says the Butler Didn't Do It. We are here currently with Mouse laying on my lap here, as you can see she's visiting. You may have a visit or two from both Chuck and Maggie Lou, who are in the room as well. And there may be an occasional pussycat. When last we met with the story, things had boiled up to where Storm had found a lot of information that he did not know about Mandula and what had happened with his father and with Reed. He also found out information that he didn't quite expect over his now-known Aunt Christina, and the fact that things had been done when she was 17 that were not good. She withstood things that had occurred through Reed and friends of his, and stood her ground and fought. And he had also found out with Tootie that she and her younger sister, RCC, and Buddy, that there was possibility they were Reeds. He also found out how well-versed his Uncle Mac was in constitutional rights, and that the man himself had no problem standing up to not only Congress and the Senate, but also to the Vice President and the President of these United States in a confrontational issue that he brought forth over Afghanistan. And the kitty who is visiting right now is our normal. Mouse raised her from a kitten. So, Mouse is kind of considered midwife Mouse in this house, as she's helped to rescue multiple kittens over the years. So, here we begin again. Chapter 56. As they left the drive, Storm asked, "Dad, where did the kitten come from?" "I cut Grandpa a break after the stress and shit I put him through, and Grandma this morning. And we ran to Starbucks. I got him and her a triple shot of espresso, a mocha latte, cappuccino with 3 sugars, with butterscotch chocolate sauce, an extra large." "Sounds more like a sugar rush to me." "More like a bribe, Storm," Emily smiled. "Kind of. Forgive me for being such a stupid asshole idiot, please." Graham shook his head. "But Dad's hearing is a hell of a lot more acute from serving in the military in the jungles of El Salvador than mine. All our uncles who served are like that. Uncle Silver's more so, because he was always on the alert to protect Aunt Peggy and Aunt Gilly from their father. It's sad to say, but both Carl and their mother Sut are still alcoholics, although Sut has gotten better. His cousin Lloyd White says Sut has left Cal about 5 or 6 years ago and has been sober since she got away from him. That's why he knows nothing about the whereabouts of their 3 children, nor any of their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. Lloyd and Penny, with Gertie, put up a smoke screen that they left New Hope after our marriages. And the fact is that Silver forbade it, and the sisters agreed. Emily turned into a river road to go south. Now Lloyd keeps me updated about Sut. Once she was able to get her act together, she's a silver craftsman, always was, and they do have a younger daughter. She and her man, that is, they were able to adopt a 3-year-old over a decade ago out of a bad situation like Silver and his sisters were in. She's 20 now, and she's a combination of Navajo, Hopi, and Zuni Indian. Wait a minute, Aunt Emily. Even though they share the land with the reservation inside a reservation, those 3 tribal affiliations don't get along, even as they are forced to, right? Ghram asked. Exactly. No one wanted Cho, who they eventually changed her name to Ku. And when she was sent to live in a group home when she was 2, it wasn't good. She works as a shepherd and weaves beautiful rugs. Sut and her man, Possum, Lloyd said he's full-blooded Comanche and is related to a college friend of Bowie's, in that of Lucy May Waxwell Knight. Possum is a leather and bead worker. He, unbeknownst to Silver, who had made his new moccasins boots, they're a gift from his mother. She suffered too at Cal's hands. And keep this under your hats. They purchased land out here. She is the new silversmith everyone is talking about. He purchased the old leather shop, and they will have Ku's herd of sheep. She was almost kidnapped by a group of men out of Hunts Valley in Iowa. She's working with Bo Collins to identify them, and one of them is in prison for the break-in, assault, rape, and of his ex-wife, and the bastard cost her the life of her baby boy. Ghram blew out a breath. Uncle will accept this. It may take him time, but he will. Uncle John and I will offer our services with AA and NA meetings at the church. John's already stretched that line out to her, and Peggy and Gilly are smoothing things over with Silver, Emily stated. Ghram turned to look at his son. Well, Dad, what about the kitten? Ghram smiled and chuckled. When we came out of Starbucks, that's when Dad heard a tiny yowl of panic. He started looking. Grandpa found her in the culvert drain. She must have run there to hide when a car or truck ripped by and then fell in, 'cause there hasn't been any real rain or snow in the last few days. This morning was a passing shower. I couldn't reach her he couldn't reach her because of his size. Dad isn't small at 6'7" and 230 plus, but I'm 160 and at 6 foot. So, as the skinny little shit of the men of the Calhoun family, I gave it a shot and got lucky on the 4th try and got a hold of her. Thank whoever that Sadim and his son Dahar were there getting their morning coffee, 'cause if they hadn't, Dad would have dropped me into the culvert when I started to slip from his grasp. They returned home with the kitten, and all 3 of them needed a good scrubbing. Emily tipped her head towards Ghram. Your grandma and I had to go digging for something for him to wear. He ruined his slacks and shirt. No way we could get them clean, and they torn a pocket out and ripped both inseams of the slacks. Chris had that as the only thing he could grab, and Sadim latched on to his cuffs when Ghram almost went all the way into the drain on the last attempt at getting that poor baby, Emily laughed. I barely got the tip of her poor little tail and did the scoop as Dahar went to his knees next to me and tore both of them out of his jeans. He got a hand under her tushy, and she sunk her tiny claws into his sleeve as they hauled me out, and Dad got a hand under Dahar's jacket to pull him to his feet. Needless to say, the Ktten family have a dinner on the house at the inn whenever they want one, Emily smiled. They deserve it, Ghram agreed. But he do look fine in them dare tight-fitting jeans of Dad Silver's, to quote the old song of Conway Twitty's. They're an old pair of my man's that he can't fit into anymore after his mild middle-aged spread. Grrr, she growled. Ghram chuckled. Thanks, Ann. They are a bit tight. I hope I just don't blow out the rear end. They gotta be about 32 years old. They're a freaking pair of Guess jeans. And Grandpa's shirt is, well, it's so big on me that Grandma and Ruby had to do a quick alteration on the back and the shoulders, so I really would have looked like a little kid playing dress up in Dad's shirts. There goes one of the kitties. Okay, come on, you two. It's reading time. This is Maggie Lou. And Chuck is right next to her, causing havoc. There goes Maggie Lou, up and over. Folks, we are live. Your grandpa still does his push-ups and sit-ups, along with chin-ups every morning. I think all of them, those of the military family members, do. He blew out the buttons on this one shirt in October, helping to decorate when Abo took a swan dive off the ladder, and Dad made a diving catch to keep her from hitting the ground. We only found the bottom 4 buttons, so that's what Rube was able to stitch back on. But man, I stunk to high heaven. It's time for another admission to come out. I faced another fear and flashback. Dad and Mom's bathroom in their suite at the inn. You see, mine is only a half bath. I'll explain this one. Emily patted his knee. Dad has a suite at the inn, but it only has the commode and sink. It's just in case the weather is too bad for him to drive home. And he hasn't brought over his winter clothes as yet. He had cut-offs and swim trunks and a couple of T-shirts he wears to swim in. I don't like to stay. Some memories can kick my ass. And one of them is in that particular suite. At one time, George had that suite for nights he stayed at the inn. That was until Ranella kicked his ass to the curb when I was 5, and she moved out of the inn completely. But he stayed in the inn, and that was his suite when she told him to straighten out Reed's ass, which didn't work because it was George, of course. She moved into the carriage house after the death of Grandmama Rose to try to straighten herself and her own life out because of the disaster he made of it, which didn't work at all because of George's influences and shit he was doing in their hometown that the Papadopouloses didn't know about. Then, when he chose to use the carriage house for his home office and tried to get back with her, that lasted about a month. Right, Aunt Em? Ghram looked over. Less than 3 weeks. We packed our items, and the men moved them into the caretaker's cottage just after we cleaned it and planted several gardens for her, and the kids planted roses along the welcome path to the cottage. That was several years after she'd been living in the carriage house. I think I was about 10. That's the year she found out he'd been involved with the drugs, and the final countdown when he'd gotten the apartment at Miss Pinky's. So I had to have a talk with Dad. He did some growling and gnashing of teeth from finding out what had happened in that suite and bathroom before they'd taken over when I transferred to Pensbury. Mom did a complete saging and then lit frankincense and jasmine to cleanse things for me to be able to relax in both the suite and the bathroom. As Dad chose to step out of the room to prevent bad vibes from infiltrating the place with his anger and his total, almost an explosion at hand, I needed to have the place made calm. We talked. But in the hallway, he threatened to dig George's ass up, kill the bastard all over again. Ghram shook his head. That's Dad. What can I say? He did not. Emily's chin dropped. Aunt Em, this is Dad we're talking about. Crazy legs quarterback, playbook man, captain of the Lions' first string, and the king of Mandula's court, including Mom's Iceman. We're talking about here, remember? What would Uncle Silver had done if it was Early, the Wizard of Iz, Albania, or Yuma, or one of your grandchildren, especially Romeo, with what we found out happened with him and his so-called uncles? Oh, shit. Sit on me and fart away. He would have dug his ass up, killed him all over again, scalped his ass, literally, along with his head, fed him his fried balls, and buried him with a stake of yarrow through his heart, then pissed all over his grave, all while doing a war dance, then lit a bonfire and burnt down the abandoned town that his family founded in upstate. What? Storm leaned forward. Sweetie, you do not know what the Lions front line are capable of doing when these men are completely pissed off, and Chris is considered the calming factor amongst all of them, although he's as insane as the rest when it comes to their families. If someone threatens one of us, you want to stand clear, believe me, but I guarantee you will get to know it. Emily smiled into the rearview mirror. So will Tootie, her baby, RCC, and Buddy, and any man that asked her for a date in the future. She may be Reed's through seed, but Mandula claimed her and her child, sister, and baby brother. This is why George Carlson is buried in a different resting place than that of the Papadopouloses and the Houlihan's family cemetery. You see, when our men started into the service of our country, there was a large piece of land that the state wanted to sell. It backed up to the old family cemetery. The Lionesses wanted to make sure, should anything go wrong, God forbid, our men would be laid to rest at home here. We purchased it and petitioned the state to allow us to extend the zone of the existing cemetery. It was granted. So, that's where the road of seashells goes into the iron fence at the two large angels. I remember something about yellow, orange, purple, and red flower petals, and something called Decoration Day? Yes, Emily gave a nod. That there's something also about the small white candles being lit by photos on the... it's gone, Mom. He shook his head. Day of the Dead, or All Saints' Day. Yaya called it exactly that, Decoration Day. We put flowers on the graves. Those that served in the military had flags placed. That what you're remembering with the small white candles and the photos is the York site. It's Jewish. The anniversary of the person's death. A white candle is lit in memory. Uncle Mac brought Uncle Gage home from the coal to rest there. Uncle Jackson is in one area over from him. Uncle Reuben is there as well. But George, no. Mandula forbade it. He's been buried in Carlsonboro Cemetery with his ancestors in the abandoned town and coal mine area. They found it in the early 1910s. And his family now live upstate, what's left of that family. None of them reside in New Hope anymore, Emily explained. And the bathroom, Storm asked. Chapter 57. Emily blew out a breath. Dad had to let your grandfather know a bit more. Ghram nodded. When I talked to Dad about things, he decided that when I was ready to get a shower and wash this mop of mine in there, because there's, quite a few memories from things that happened there. Dad set a chair outside the door and planted that huge marine badass body of his there, and had his Starbucks while Mom's was kept warm for her, so she could find clothes, and Rube did the adjustments, and Aunt Em here made up a formula for our new Pennywise. Penny for short. She's a little girl. Dad, are you okay? Yeah. Ghram glanced over his shoulder. I was a lot shaky, really bad. I'll admit when it come to opening the shower door. I didn't want a flashback, and I damn sight didn't want to freeze like a frickin' statue. But Dad, with that superhuman hearing he's got, again heard me turn the water off and called out what he's done since I was little. You heard his nickname for me this morning, and Squirt, I'm right here. Just like he did when he taught me how to swim or ride a bike or ice skate, and how to properly escort a lady onto the dance floor and dance with her. Yeah, Storm, hate to tell you, kid, but that's something you'll have to learn from the men in this family. We all can bust a move with a lady on the dance floor. Yaya Poppy insisted we all be given dance lessons in the ballroom on the 3rd floor when we were about 12. And believe me, it's the best thing going. You won't look like an idiot at your school dances, and especially at your high school prom. So it was good to hear his voice. I put the robe on, and Dad handed me the clothes and stuff. And when I opened the door, he was right there. Him in the chair, sipping his drink and holding Mom's for her, and Mom getting the tangles out of his hair from the wind, and the culvert had sticks and junk in it, and Dad's hairband busted. when it got caught on the grate trying to get Penny loose. And the smell of that culvert was not roses and lilies. All that garbage wound up tangled in his hair as it swirled past on its way to drain into the canal and then the Delaware River. It was cool seeing them standing there together. I could imagine them in their younger days before any of us were born, side by side as always, the quarterback and captain and his cheerleader, the love of his life. And when I first fed the kitten in my office after Dad got cleaned up and got her scrubbed up, we chose the name Pennywise. The clown in It, right? Because she was in the sewage drain? Actually, it's supposed to be a freshwater culvert to take the rain and melt its snow. You two and that poor baby sure didn't smell like fresh water when you walked through the door, Ghram. He had to get cleaned up twice. Effie said from the stink of him. And that poor tiny kitten, it's not more than 2 weeks old. Its eyes are barely opened. So of course, I called Kimmy. Dahar was waiting for her and Ollie to look for the mama and her litter mates. Emily glanced in the mirror. Dad bathed her in one of the large mixing bowls and dried her off with several kitchen towels. Ghram smiled. Fortunately, your mom found an old pair of your Nikes. Emily grinned. They're a bit beat from all the times the guys got me in a game of animal basketball when I was home from college. But I definitely need to buy a pair of dress shoes. You totaled those knockoff Fergomos, Emily chuckled as she turned into the doctor's office's parking lot off of River Road in Yardley, where there were only 3 cars parked. Yup, I did. I tore the sole off of one of them, didn't I? Okay. Ghram took a breath and opened his seatbelt to turn to face Storm. We need to have a little talk. Storm raised an eyebrow. Dad, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Memories. Dr. Farr is a good guy, as you know from last night. The very best in all our books. He stood by me and helped with everything I screwed up with and worked with Perry, my counselor. It's me, my issues. He's never hurt me, even during any of the exams I needed because of, well, the things that happened, and there were a lot of them. He's always been gentle and careful. The trouble I have is the memories of why I had to have those examinations done. You need to understand, I will have a reaction, mostly tremors, and I stutter sometimes. But I'll be okay. It's me. And I had a bad stutter as a child that allowed Reed and George to play on it in some of the shit that they did to me. That stutter comes from Dad. Dad had one too when he was younger. It's one of the reasons I like the character of Bill Denborough in the book It. The stutter raises its ugly head. It takes the time to get me through it. And Dr. Farr is very patient when it comes to, back to haunt me. But it's not his fault. And every Wednesday via internet I talk to Perry Penny. You heard Mom speak of him. Storm, watch Azart with your dad. You'll understand better when you see. Emily opened the door to the cold. You were just a little bit out of it last night, but you'll see how he operates. And his wife, Rasha, is an incredible pediatrician. She's the doctor that your Ghram took RCC and Buddy to. They adore her, especially RCC. They talk teddy bears. Rasha's office is full of them. She's a collector. The three made the run for the building's entrance. They climbed to the second floor to enter the office. Gram's body started to shake in tremors the minute they walked into the waiting room. He took a deep breath to blow it out. Dad, I'm okay. Let Mom get. He pointed at Storm, then motioned like he was signing something. Registered, Emily finished. She squeezed Storm's hand. Stay close to Dad. You know it, Mom. They sat down as she signed him in with Deedle, Azart's receptionist, at the desk. Emily took a seat next to Ghram and put her hand out. He took it to blow out another long, relaxing breath. The door to the exam area opened as an older man with graying dark black hair and deep olive skin stepped out. Ghram, he extended his hand. Happy Thanksgiving. Ghram took his hand. Dr. Farr, thank you for... Think of your middle name, take a breath, and put the words to your favorite song. Ghram closed his eyes. Thank you for the appointment on a holiday, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. He finished in his tenor tone. Our pleasure. Is there anything? Ghram shook his head. Good, then you came with Emily and Storm for just a visit and to say hello. Actually, Dr. Farr, I came with Aunt Em and my son Storm. We need a test for paternity to present to the court to have his last name changed for his birth certificate if it hasn't been done already, and we'll need to set up an appointment for a close relative DNA. Judy has already called. She also has a prenatal appointment with Cindy Moore, and she wishes to speak to Mirasha about being the baby's, RCC's, and Buddy's doctor as well. When the child is born, we will do paternity as well. Those bastards should both be put behind bars. Azart shook his head. How could a man who is supposed to love a woman do this? It makes no sense to me. Well, let's get started, shall we? Storm, he offered his hand. I remember you as a child. You'll be as tall as your father. He bowed towards Ghram. Your Uncle Jim and your grandfather, Christian, and your great-grandfather, the old man Calhoun, and Pops himself. I thought Grandpa's name was Christopher. Storm took his hand in his left. Not exactly, Emily smiled. Ghram chuckled. Dad's birth name is uniquely his. Grandma is Irish, Jewish, American. The old man is Irish, American, Catholic. Dad, well, Dad's just weird. He follows both backgrounds and deals with what your great-great-grandfather, Pops, calls the shine. On his side, it comes from what his people call the wise. Dad doesn't think he has it, but, his birth name is Judea Christian Constantine Connolly Calhoun. Holy cow, Storm blinked. More like holy crap, Emily laughed. Dad Silver thought his name was bad when Yaya translated it to Silver Bear. Then he met your grandpa when they first met at 12, and he heard his name, Silver dropped to the ground and roared with laughter. Your grandpa yanked him to his feet. Doe brown eyes met ice crystal blue, and there was a challenge issued. We thought they would be heading off to sort things out behind Theo's auto barn, and there was going to be a brawl to end all brawls. They were equally matched in height, weight, build, and ferocity. Silver used his given name and stated, "You try to pronounce that damn thing." Yaya renamed me Silver Bear because even if I don't know how to say the damn thing, I own the son of a bitch thanks to my parents. My old man couldn't pronounce it either. He slurred the fucked up thing. Why don't I be Silver and you just be Chris? They've had each other's back ever since. Chris was quarterback, Silver and Jackson his running backs, Czar and Rasputin were his left and right guards on the offensive line, Happy centered the line with John and Hut at his right and left tackles, and Mac and Pat as his wide receivers. She did a movement or two with her hands, and a shimmy shake of her hips, then a step or two, turn and hop, and flipped her long hair. And you saw me do that jump over Dad's shoulder earlier today. We might not look it now in our 50s and early 60s, but we ladies were some lookers in our day. We were quite some tasty dishes, what was called by our lions very hot messes. You saw Aunt Emily do that push and flip and into Uncle Silver's lap this morning. When Dad lost his grip on the candle, he threw to Uncle Mac, right? Ghram stated. Yeah, it was cool. I take it Ranella made herself known on some matter this morning, Azat Farr said. She sure did. Storm looked wide-eyed. Well, Storm, if Liliana could design the cheer as assistant coach, Colette could perfect the outfits that we could move in and not show too much titties or tushies, and Lottie did the outrageous big hairstyle for us, we could bust a move on the sidelines and in the center of the field at halftime shows. We actually had taken the National Cheerleading Championship in Florida for our division 2 years running. We were the Lionesses' first-string cheerleading squad, and your grandmother, Ranella, she was our queen, top of the pyramid, and our captain, as Chris was captain for the first string of the football team. Your Aunt Rainey was to be named for her, and she was christened and had a laden bin, a female baby naming in Jewish practices. As such, when John gave her last rites and read the Kaddish, Czar and Desiree's youngest daughter, Queenie, was given that name of Queenie to honor your grandma when she was born. The year after Dad came along, because Desi knew Ranella would never allow herself to have another child that she so desperately wanted and cherished because of George. She would not put another child in that position ever again, and she was inconsolable the day she had your parents take you home from the hospital, Ghram. So, at risk to her own life and health, she went onto the pill. Azart looked at her. Ghram knows? That's good. Let's go into the office and we'll talk. He looked over his shoulder as the doorknob turned and clicked. The door closed. Hold on, that may be Samuel Moon. He went to the door to open it and looked out. What do you think you are doing? What are you doing here? You were told long ago. Your answer was no, and you should get the help you desperately need. Now get out before I call the police. There was a mumble, followed by footsteps receding down the stairs. He shut the door and locked it, then turned to speak to Deedle. Dee? He took his pen from his pocket and wrote something to hand her and put the pen back. If she comes here again, call the police and Child Protective Services, as something needs to be done, and it appears the caseworker and psychiatrist is worthless, along with her rehab people. Then call Sam and let him know to call you when he arrives at the door, please. Do not unlock it unless he is at it. She is only after drugs, which I will not supply for her. Yes, sir. Deedle picked up the phone as he led them through to the exam room. Chapter 58. They entered the exam area and walked into room 4, all the way to the back. He closed the door behind him. Much more quieter here. Now hop up here, son. He pointed to the exam table. Storm shuffled over. He put one foot on the stool and bit his lip. Hold it. Ghram stepped in front of him. You are not risking it. Put your arms around my neck. Dad, you could... I've healed. A long time passing, and I've worked out with Pops, Grandpa, Jim, Dakota, and Richie. I box in the ring once a month against some pretty tough guys. That includes your Uncle Haystacks, as we all call Aunt Emily, and Uncle Silver's Yuma. Not to mention Uncles Dan, Jess, and the Isman, and some others of those guys. I boxed against Uncle Wabu and several of his brothers, and they are Ugandan giants, and every one is military trained from their father and grandfather. Now put your arms around my neck. You're going for a ride. Storm looked him in the eyes. Ghram bent forward to put his forehead against Storm's dreadlocks. Trust me, I carried you up to your suite last night. Plus, if I do something stupid, Doc Azart is here. He'll be fine, Storm. He's strong and is a badass like the old man and Pops Calhoun, his dad and his brother. Storm smiled. Okay. He put his arms around his father's neck. But if you... He was lifted like he weighed nothing and set on the table. Get your balance. I ain't letting go until you do. Got it, Dad. Storm felt his eyes bulge. Ghram stepped back to look into his son's shocked face. I might deal with flashbacks and a patchwork of memories, PTSD, and what I call freeze frame. But I can fight most of my own battles, and I got backup if I need it. He swept Storm's dreadlocks out of his eyes. Aunt Em, I think my son and I, after we visit with Doc here, need a salon day. Will you take us? Sure, I'll call Mom when we're done, Emily smiled. Destiny is open today? Until 4. He looked at Storm. Sounds good? Get her hair done? Not cut. He shook his head. Storm smiled. I'd like that, Dad. Ghram stepped back to kneel and take off the special Arthur Luckland shoes and braces that seemed somehow too tight for Storm's feet. Are your feet hurting? These are too damn tight. When were they fitted? He removed the socks and saw the bruising and swelling on the sides of the feet. These are not going back on. I'll figure something out, even if I have to carry you across the parking lot and then into Destiny's. When was the last time you had a fitting? Azart buzzed his nurse. Yes, Doc. The male voice came over. I need a pair of soft-soled slippers, padded insoles, and a walker brought to room 4, please. Right away, sir. Azat looked at them as Ghram set them down in the chair next to Emily. The beginning of 8th grade, over a year ago. Ghram looked at Emily, then Azat. Aren't they supposed to be checked every 3 to 6 months? That's what is recommended. Azat shook his head. Those slippers I called for. They will ease some of the issues. But I want Sam here to look at those feet. Ghram took a deep breath to steady himself. Dr. Azat, I have a question. What causes club feet? Is it a birth defect, or is it caused if the mother is drug addicted or doesn't take care of herself or the baby when it's developing? Or, he swallowed hard, can the sperm effect be slow down, Ghram? You'll do fine. Ghram inhaled. Can the sperm affected by heavy alcohol use cause this? And Dr. Azat, I'm losing it honestly here. I'm scared to death that me being a drunk caused this to happen to my son. But please, shoot from the hip. Don't sugarcoat it. If I caused this by my stupidity, I need to know. Azat placed a hand on Gram's shoulder. No, you did not cause this. The alcohol can affect the sperm, yes, and new studies show that a father who is continually drinking can create a child born with FAS, but it will affect the growth of the head, stature, and slow growth. You did not do this, Ghram. However, it is now recommended that if a couple wants to start a family, the male stop drinking alcohol altogether 3 months in advance, and then starting to try for the pregnancy after he has done so. Azat folded his arms across his chest. As I remember, Kathy saw me once for the confirmation of the pregnancy. I prescribed prenatal vitamins and folic acid. I told her that I wanted her to make an appointment with our OBGYN at the clinic, Cindy Moore. And she states it appears neither she or her mother, Michelle, ever made an appointment, or any for that matter. And this young man was born in that trailer of Michelle's that she rented from that old drunk of an English teacher who was found dead in there 3 years ago. Manikowski or something like that. Out on Durham Road. He was born without any prenatal care and about 2 months premature, and that also was never dealt with, just as her own birth was never. This is why he was rushed to St. Mary's when Ranella and Poppy took custody and remained for 3 months there in their care. I have something to state here, Azat. I do not mean to interrupt. I apologize. But I am not thrilled about it by no means, and I never was. What's that, Emily? He looked at Emily, who sat next to Storm's shoes and braces. Storm was brought to Renella's attention because of this. When he was when he was found to have spinal bifida, Kathy and Michelle freaked. They knew they both screwed up and Renella would be gunning for them because when Kathy found out she was pregnant, she flaunted it in Renella's face, as did Michelle, and insisted he was her son's. Now, whether she knew he was Gram's and didn't know Ghram was Renella's and was pulling a fast one in the attempt, or assumed that he was just Chris and Effie's, or she therefore had continued to sleep with Reed. And, well, Ghram, forgive me before I state this, but thought stupidly because Ghram had told her he was gay, that gay men shoot blanks, and that the baby was Reed's. That's debatable. However, she always claimed Reed was Storm's father. It's possible that she, through Renella, did know Ghram was Renella's, Chris, and Ethel's, but thought she had a better shot at more funds with a male heir through the legitimate son, and, as George would say, not the bastard. No hurt feelings, Aunt Emily. It's the truth. That's the way those two would have thought, not Renella or anyone else in Mandula. Michelle was a sneaky-ass bitch, and she could play our queen like a damned fiddle. When we were in our adolescence and not our teens yet, Candy Dockin, Michelle's mother, worked for Athena. She was Aristotle's mother, Storm, Ghram confirmed. Background check. I'm your father. Renella is my birth mother. Pilar and Theo, her parents. Theo's parents were Tessa and Nicholas. His mother was Narcissus. His father was Aristotle. Aristotle was the first to graduate from New Hope Salisbury High School. Go ahead, Anne, and explain that Ares' mother was Athena and his father was Zephyr, right? Correct. Okay. Candace Dawkins was employed at the inn on housekeeping detail. That was up until and through her divorce from William Wallace Dawkins. Shortly after, she, Candace, tried to put the moves on Aristotle. Not only was he Athena's son, but Athena adored Nari and loved Tessa so much. She was a Greek bride who was chosen by Zephyr and brought here from Athens before Hitler ran for election because she was an orphan and was Jewish. She lost her entire family there as they were Jews. She informed Nari and Tessa, and this was not going to happen. Aristotle was loyal and very much in love with Nari. Candy's next move was to start rumors about Tessa stepping out on Nicholas, who, when Nicholas heard this, thought his through his devout love, trusted her, but still inquired and found out that, yes, she had stepped out on him. But it was with Sydney's parents to purchase an anniversary gift for Nick, as she felt her English was not up to par, and asked them to help so the persons she was purchasing items from could understand her. He confirmed it in front of her and Tessa what had gone on, and that he was trying to stop this ongoing nonsense. He wanted no part of it. Remember, the Papadopoulos family were Greek Orthodox Catholic, even though Athena and Tessa were Jewish. They both married their husbands in an Orthodox ceremony, and the men accepted the women with their Jewish traditions and continued them on. Their vows meant everything to them. The day after this meeting, Candace was gone, fired. Ranella felt sorry for Michelle, and Michelle knew how to play that game on Ranella. Mom said that Michelle cried the blues, that she was a child of a broken marriage and had no stability, and she was going to have to find a job and fend for herself because her father had planned for another family, and her mother was going to wind up with any man that could pay the bills. Ghram shook his head. Candy, as you were told, is still in town, and fruitier than a nut cake. On top of it, it was all supposed to be Ranella's fault because she had heard the rumors and things Candy was talking about at the kitchen store and informed her great-great-grandmother, Rose, at Mystic Moments, and Rose, being good friends with Narcissus and Athena, and she adored Tessa, took it upon herself and knew the fact that Tessa was with Boccianiki and PayPal Sydney as they were at the witch shop, and stepped out that day in question to do the shopping. I lost count, but I take it Pegina and Rose talked to the Papadopoulos woman. Storm looked at her. Correct. That's exactly what Michelle pulled. In the end, the two of them, Michelle and Kathy, wanted to make a deal over Storm. Money-hungry bitches like Candace is what they were, because they wanted money that neither of them could ever have enough of. Just like Candace figured she could take Aristotle away from Nari, and then when that failed, she tried it with Nick and Tessa. Those men were old enough to be her father and grandfather. She thought if she did that, she could then gain access to the family's estate and their financial affairs. Emily adjusted in her seat. When Storm was born, within weeks after, when she found out about his issues, she, Michelle, called Ranella for a meeting in Doylestown. Kathy wanted to turn Storm over to her in exchange. Yes, money changed hands. I don't know how much. It didn't matter to Ranella, as she now had her grandson to care for and provide for. But Kathy was gone the afternoon she turned him over, and Michelle took off with Eric a day later. Basically, Storm paid for whatever it took to get those two gone. I'm sorry, but when you, Ghram, went home with Chris and Effie, it was with the intent of the three of them loving you and raising you together. You, Ghram, were not ransom, or a financial way of means, or a get-out-of-New Hope free card. Ranella loved you as best she could because of George, and had she known what he did to her son, Azart, Ghram was molested and repeatedly sexually assaulted and raped by that bastard because he was Ranella's and Chris's child. You know what he pulled on her for all those years. Ranella would have blown him away herself if she'd ever found out that what that bastard had put this child through. And it was George who did it, and Reed had a hand in it. She lowered her head to take in a deep breath. I'm not done. Give me a sec. She took a slow breath in, then released it. Any one of us would have supplied her with the means and ways, and the body would have never been found. We would have made sure of it. Now I'm finished. Mandula, Anam. Mandula, Mama. Mandula, boys. Always. I heard the mandula and nothing else, but I would have joined you. Storm suffers from spina bifida, a birth defect of the spinal cord not being fully contained by the growth of the vertebrae in the back. It did not develop properly because of lack of vitamins and folic acid. He was fitted with a brace at age 2 when this was diagnosed. The club feet occurred because of and are associated with spina bifida. He wore the special shoes from birth, but it got worse as he began walking due to the spinal cord's decompression. I don't remember him having club foot when I first came home. I knew he wore the back brace, and he was supposed to go to St. Christopher's Children's Hospital and Nazareth Hospital, and I'm thinking he had appointments with specialists at the Shriners Hospital, if I'm correct, but that never happened. Did it, Aunt Emily? Ghram looked to her. Reed canceled all the appointments, Emily responded, after he took custody. That's got me wondering if he didn't already know Storm was yours. Dad, the system. They won't do anything that the parents don't approve. Kathy and Reed never signed anything. Ghram closed his eyes and took a deep breath, then looked at his art. Another way to hurt me, the family, and Ranella. Can anything be done now? I know on infants, I remember Ranella, Mom, and my aunts talking about the use of cast while he wore the shoes, and then physical therapy. He's 15 years old, though. Please tell me that these two, I don't even have the words for them, and this is coming from a recovering drunk. Because of them two, my son may be crippled for the rest of his life. Is there surgery and therapy that can correct the damage they left occurred? An orthopedic surgeon would make a small incision in the back of his heels to get to the Achilles tendon, then cut the tendon and stretch them to lengthen and move them into the correct position. The stitches that are used would dissolve by themselves. Then he would require physical therapy. Izzy's flea could do the therapy. He should, however, be fitted for a back brace, though, because of the spina bifida. And I know we deal with rickets and hip displacement. Storm, you want to lay down so I can look at your legs. Dr. Moore will be here in a few minutes. I hope you all don't mind, but I took the liberty in asking him to consult on this. Dr. Samuel Moore, who you originally saw, Storm, when you started to have problems, Emily explained as he laid down. Okay, Storm said from where he laid on the table. The knock came on the door. Come in, as Art called. Chapter 59. Dr. Moore stepped in with Azart's nurse, who brought the slippers and walker. Doc, Deedle made those calls. Turned out she's wanted for questioning. Good call. These are here when you're all ready for them. Ghram, how's it going? Miss Emily, happy Thanksgiving to you. Tommy Bell, Deedle's husband, and Azart's nurse stepped back out. Hello, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Let me see how tall this child has grown in 10 years. Wow, how are you doing, Ghram? Good, thanks. Azart, Cindy has repeatedly tried to contact the woman's caseworker in regards to those children and has gotten nowhere. She called her former parole officer. They can't or won't do anything, and there has been no prenatal in this pregnancy like that of the others. The parole officer is worthless as she is no longer in the system for the prior attempted crimes she perpetrated and has done time for. And now, as Deedle, my daughter, talked to the new police detective, Helani Pele and Slidella Parker, and there are warrants that had been issued out of Philadelphia. Ghram looked at Emily. Tammy, he whispered. The doctors looked at each other. Dr. Moore gave a nod. Yes. Ghram blew out a breath. And Emily? Storm, excuse me a moment. He left the exam room to take his phone from his pocket. Ghram, brother, what's up? Jess answered when he dialed. Your ass better be seated. What's going on? Tammy was just at Dr. Azart's office looking for drugs. I don't know if she had the kids with her or not, but if she's in town, so is Reed, and Wells can't be too far behind her. I'll call Aunt Colette and let Abuela Shelley and Abuelo Cugat know she's been sighted. I'll also make a call to Willie Smythe and see if she can have someone look into the last known address of her. Maybe we'll get lucky and get the kids the hell out of her clutches, as she and the shit she's got them in the middle of. Thank you, brother. Welcome. Any word on Creed? Still in ICU, and Dan is with him, but he is awake. And they're talking about moving the little dude. Just make sure Dano eats. Daisy is there. She will. He ended the call for Ghram to walk back into the room. Storm was sitting up as Dr. Moore finished the exam. It all looks good, Dad. Now, on to your young man. Let us see and have Deedle check my schedule for an opening. An hour later, Storm was scheduled for surgery with Dr. Moore on the morning of the following Monday at St. Mary's Medical Center in Langhorne, about 16 miles from New Hope. And tomorrow he had a 10 o'clock appointment with Dr. Azart and Dr. Moon both to be fitted for a Boston-style back brace. Chapter 60. Storm now sat next to his father in Destiny's Earth Vibe Hair and Body Care Day Spa. Dad, are you sure about this? Ghram smiled at his son. Oh yeah, most definitely. Let me explain about my destiny. We met on the first day of 11th grade at the bus stop for Pennsbury High School. Her parents are incredible, like your grandparents, Calhoun. Her father, Dad Jacob, was NYPD, a captain in the narcotics division. They lived near the Twin Towers in Lower Manhattan, and, well, Destiny's dad can be, and is a badass when he needs to be. He was on medical leave because he'd been rear-ended 2 months before in a car chase, going after a drug dealer that was connected to part of a mob. That was when another officer was hit by a private vehicle and a collision took place with his undercover cruiser. He had back, neck, and leg injuries with head trauma at the time. Oh, I heard New York is connected with Newark, and that Newark is a normal run for drugs down to Philadelphia. I know that from Cappy and Reed, Storm explained. Ghram looked into the mirror. Yes, it's true. And Dad, Jacob, was the commanding officer until the injuries. Rain's niece and nephew are part of the team that he put together until they had an issue with a dirty cop. Their entire team is planning on transferring down to New Hope as soon as they get the okay on it. So, New Hope would have a narcotics division? Yes, and with the shit that's now raised its ugly head with Reed, Jim and Richie's request has been approved. But on that fateful day of 9/11, Destiny was 9 years old and home from school sick. She had bronchitis, which would later be diagnosed by Dr. Azart and Harry Wolf as tonsillitis. Mom Hazel was to drop Destiny's 3 sisters off at daycare with their neighbor's 2 little ones and take her brother and the neighbor's older daughter into their academy a block from the towers. Storm gave him a side-angle gaze. She's the oldest of how many? Ghram inhaled and blew out a breath. Quite a few. The Cranberries have enough children to have the offense and defense of football teams, first string, and possibly part of special teams unit. They're Catholic. Mom Hazel's family, the Samaritinos, had owned the apartment building. It had been built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, as a 14-story hotel. Then, in the late 1920s, it was turned into apartments, or what would have been called a tenement building. Her family purchased it in the 50s and renovated it to modernize it into apartments. Their apartment was on the top floor, the penthouse. And after Mom Hazel was back from dropping the kids off, she would have opened the office while Dad Jacob was going to stay with Destiny. He rubbed under his right eye, then turned to Storm. Dad, you okay? Yeah, this story is a little scary for me. Destiny saw the first plane come in low, like a missile from her bedroom window, as it faced the direction of the tower, a little after 8:30 in the morning, and screamed for her dad, then ran from the apartment in her nightgown and bare feet. He was still on the front steps as she left the elevator, and the plane hit at 8:46. Her mom was on the pavement starting to leave. Oh no. Yeah, oh no is right. The second plane hit at 9:03 as they watched in horror, and her dad started to go to help. She came off the front steps screaming at him as he trotted down the block. She pushed past her mother and several neighbors to follow him, then grabbed him by the back of the belt. He drug her about 2 feet with her screaming, no, he was going to die. Shit, is she like the ladies in her family? Ghram inhaled. Possibly. She has asthma really bad, and her flipping out caused her to have an attack. Her dad had a choice. His daughter, who could die if he didn't get her back to their home for her aspirator, or do what called him into action, even injured as bad as he already was. A beautiful, slender lady walked into the room, tall, at least 5'10", with elegant, long waist-length, wavy ice blonde hair, like photos he'd seen of Farrah Fawcett in the 70s, and sapphire blue eyes that sparkled when she looked at his father. She smiled and stated, "Daddy chose me, and I am learning from the coven. Yes, we think I may have some gifts." Storm stared at her with his mouth agape. Chapter 61. Storm looked from Destiny to his father and back at her. "Wow, you're beautiful." "Told you, but you wouldn't listen to me, would you, Destiny?" "This one thinks she's a real bow wow." Ghram cocked his head to Destiny. "No way," Storm dropped his head. "I'm sorry for staring." "That's okay. If she doesn't appreciate the attention, I'm very proud she gets it," Ghram grinned. Destiny stepped behind Graham's chair. "Thank you. Daddy still has bad dreams about that day, even though he's been retired all these years because of the injuries to himself that he suffered a second time on that walk from hell. When those towers came at us, I was barely 9. Jordy was 7, Marie's 6. Sarah had just turned 4 the day before. Dolly was only 3. Bobby was 2, and Sylvia was 18 months. Rachel was the baby at 11 weeks. She played with Graham's hair. They're all grown and doing fantastic. Hell of a nice family we're talking about here. With a sigh, she said, "We had Snoop Dogg, our Great Dane puppy. He's gone now, and Daddy and Mama have Wish. She's another Dane and Snoop's granddaughter. Jet, my 5-year-old pregnant cat. I just convinced my folks to let me adopt her from the streets, where she had lived since I was about 5. And Erika's cat, Stardust, and their 3 chihuahuas, Nacho, Taco, and Chili Lime. All have since passed, but we have some of their descendants." She rubbed her nose and sniffled. Ghram reached for her hand on his shoulder. "I know that thought hurts." She nodded. They were in the apartment next door. Daddy got me back to the brownstone building. He and Mom went into action. I hate to say it, but we knew. We all knew. It was going to be every man, woman, and child for themselves to get out of there. New York City was under attack, and we needed to move. Mom knew we needed to get out of there, even though she owned the building, because we could be next. She pulled the main fire alarm to alert the people, and they helped to evacuate the building, while Maria and I got our hands on 2 double coaches and a baby's chest carrier and our cat crates. And Jordy pulled the jogging coach he'd found by the dumpster one day and hauled that out of the storage room to air up the tires. Even flat, he figured it would be useful, and he was right. Ghram played with her fingers. "You up to this? Take it slow." Destiny fiddled with the combs on the counter with her free hand as she came around Graham's chair to lean against it. "Slow, yeah. Unlike those damn buildings tumbling down." Maria grabbed Stardust, and Dad rounded up the little guys. I stuffed Jet unceremoniously into her crate. Mom put Rachel in the chest carrier and strapped her onto me. Then Sylvia went into the back of one coach. Bobby went in the front of it. Dolly and Sarah were put in the second. The little guys got their leads clipped on and plopped in the jogger, and Daddy told Jordy to make sure he brought the air pump just in case. Daddy stacked the two pet taxis on the front of the unit and duct taped them to the frame of the jogger and tied off Snoop's lead to its handle. Ready for this wild-ass ride? 'Cause it fleckin' was one, and several of my family members came from that day. Yes, ma'am, he answered. Destiny spun Ghram so he could face Storm and continued. The last thing Mom did was go for the freezers. Freezers? Why the freezers? Storm looked at her. Destiny smiled. We lived in the heart of Manhattan. Fire. Those freezers will take a hit, but they act like a safe for important documents. She taught Enrica to seal important papers in a freezer bag and put them there. Jordy and I took turns pushing the double stroller. Daddy handled the animals, and Mom the third stroller. By the time we were a block away, and after they'd and we went door to door to make sure everyone and all the animals were out of the building, we wound up spotting in a tree across the street Xavier and Charo when we left the building. Ghram pointed to the two large macaws, one red, the other blue, that walked, fluttered, and danced across the tree limbs and branches of the area attached to the side of the building and their interior floor to ceiling 8-foot in length cage against the wall that connected the waiting room and reception area. That's them, he smiled. Destiny nodded her head. Daddy managed to get them out of the tree where they perched because crazy Miss Filch was screaming as she fled that the world was over, and she released the two macaws to the wild to fend for themselves. We had no cage for them. Theirs was too big to handle anyway, and there was no time. Daddy felt to go back in and try to find something to carry them in. So, Ghram nodded. Look behind the Japanese painted screen partition. Storm leaned to the side. Destiny pointed to the large cage with the open door and the hand-built climbing area where the two large red and blue parrots walked across and flew from cage to limb as they flew in their aviary outside. There they are, and that playground of those Ghram built for them when I moved them here. As we walked with them on our shoulders, the building came at us. Daddy rushed us into an alley between two good-sized office buildings, and we knelt trying to cover the babies and animals and ourselves with cardboard from the dumpster and garbage bags. Whatever Daddy, Mom, Jordy, and I could lay our hands on, and prayed our asses off to keep us alive and get us the hell out of there as dust and debris filled the air and papers floated overhead. And we all felt like we were either going to choke to death or suffocate from lack of clean air. If you can ever call the air of New York City clean. There was nothing Daddy could have done. He would have died in those buildings or in their collapse. So Daddy, through tears, the first I'd ever seen him shed, asked God to forgive him, but he needed to save his wife and children and our pets. The next thing I can remember is we're covered in dust and dirt, stinking to high heaven from the garbage bags we buried ourselves in to take the impact of anything that came at us. And believe me, glass, brick, cinder, concrete, papers, pens, files, bits and pieces of burning debris, even people's clothing landed on and around us. Moments later, we were in shambles and walking like zombies, and there are these two little girls, twins, about 3, dressed in saris. Saris? Storm gave them both a look. Sorry, S-A-R-I-S. It's Destiny's New York accent coming out, Ghram explained. Gee, thanks, she laughed and tapped him in the back of the head. Storm still looked at them, not understanding. Got this, Ghram. She smiled. It's an Indian outfit the ladies wear, like a very long, beautiful piece of material that is folded and then intricately wrapped around them and tucked and laid over the shoulder of a blouse. Oh, I've seen ladies wearing them, like in the photos of Dali. And there's a lady here at one of the Indian cafes that wears one. They're beautiful. Sorry, I didn't know what they were called. That's okay. You were respectful of the tradition and asked. Ghram looked in the mirror. Well, the twins, they were no more than toddlers. They're crying and covered in dirt and dust. Mom recognized them. And they're standing in front of this building. Mom looks around and realizes it's Dr. Monet's home and office. Mom knew their mother was a doctor because she was our doctor, and she asked Chandra and Patel where their mom was. They pointed in the direction of the towers. Chandra said her go-to help. Oh no, my God. Storm closed his eyes and rubbed his forehead. She glanced over her shoulder and looked into the mirror to wipe a single tear. Mom and Daddy looked at each other. The girls were put into the coach with Sylvia and Bobby. There was no way they would have made that type of hike, and Daddy and Mom were not leaving them there. Mom later said she got the feeling Doc and Dira hadn't made it. We walked through the Port Authority to the George Washington Bridge, and we're going for Fort Lee, New Jersey. In full, it was a hike close to 15 miles. Daddy, more than twice that amount, until we found a motel and that would take pets. Daddy in slip-on Ghram slippers, Jordy in a pair of flip-flops, Maria in Big Bird Ghram slippers, and he put Snoop inside his T-shirt to carry him for several blocks when he couldn't walk anymore. He was 5 months old and 80 pounds. Daddy wasn't losing any of us, and I was in bare feet. Then Mom figured if we could shift the little guys to one side of the jogger, we then had a chance, and Daddy could catch a breath. He squashed Snoop into the side of the critter jogger, and the birds actually perched on each side of the handles. When Georgie and Maria started to have problems at the bridge, he asked if he walked me over with the babies, and if we could try to push the critter coach together, could I be his big girl and be brave enough for him to go back after he settled me and the kids and the dogs, cats, and birds. He could take the jogger back and get them and Mom, and he could put Jordy and Maria in the jogger and bring them back. I told him yes, shaking all the while and hoping he didn't notice, which of course, being a daddy, he did, and knew I was scared to death. But I was going to be his big girl and do what I could to help my daddy get us through this. She played with her wrist where she wore a tattoo. Storm noticed it looked like scrolling of some type. Ghram took her hand to bring her wrist forward and kissed it, like he'd done it more times than he could count. You okay discussing this? Yeah, you're here. I'm good. She stepped near him to run her fingers down his cheek and curl it into several strands of his long hair. I'm okay. If you need to stop, don't push. It's a trauma. We don't do that, you know that. Perry will have her asses otherwise. I know, I'm good, she smiled. Mom had collapsed on the bridge by the time he got back to them. She was pregnant and we didn't know it. Daddy made her stay there. He pushed the two little ones in the jogger to me and went back to carry Mom to us. We stayed on the park bench to rest for about 3 hours, and that's when he almost shit. He realized I didn't have any shoes, nothing on my feet. Daddy and I had walked those coaches across the bridge. I was exhausted, and he got all of us settled on the bench, and we stayed put, while he went looking for a motel that would accept the animals. He then somehow found a motel after hunting for hours, and it was the Motel Hotel 16, and the manager and staff were great. Those folks called for an ambulance for Daddy and helped Mom and I get the kids cleaned up. Mrs. Turner's teenage daughter, Randy, cleaned and bandaged my feet because they looked like ground beef with the blisters. That family even ran to the pizza place and got us food and kept the reporters at bay. They became family to us and still are, every one of them. They've been at every one of our high school graduations from Pensbury and college and university to cheer us on, Ghram smiled. Very supportive. She ran her long fingers through his father's hair as she stepped behind him once more. Then, when we, him and I, had made the walk to the motel, he set me in the room and went back for Maria and Geordie in the jogger with the cats. Miss Amber asked where he was going. She is Miss Turner's daughter-in-law. When I told her, she ran to her mom, and when he returned, Mrs. Turner gave him the car keys to get Mom and had an ambulance waiting for us when he got back with her. We all went to the hospital to be looked at. Daddy they kept. We were at the motel for 2 months, and they wouldn't accept any payments. They figured we lost everything. That's how long it took for Daddy to recover in the hospital. He re-injured his back and legs really bad and had to retire. They sold our building in Manhattan. They had a hell of a time over the real estate in the area. Eventually, when they were able to go in and get our things, the building had basically been looted by them. They petitioned the courts for custody of Enrica's and Ford's children and had to wait on them, and then Dr. Monet's girls. All 3 were killed in the towers or on the ground when they fell. Mom and Daddy adopted the children when none of their families could handle their situation of the trauma they were dealing with. And Mom gave birth to my twin sisters in April of 2002, Brett and Brenda. They bought the farmhouse in Washington's Crossing, and I met this one on the first day of school in 11th grade at the bus stop. He's my BFF, and he took me to every dance, both homecomings. He was the sexiest prom date you ever want to see, and we were prom king and queen in our senior year. Destiny leaned down to kiss his cheek at the as the front desk bell rang. I will be right back. This is a special delivery with a bunch of bullpucky attached to it. I'm glad your Aunt Lottie is here along with your Aunt Emily. We'll be right here. Destiny turned. Only on Thanksgiving am I the dingbat that needs to deal with a screaming bridezilla and 2 monster-in-laws. Jeez Louise. You need me, yell, Ghram called. Chapter 62. 15 minutes later, the door of the shop slammed. There were muttered curses in a foreign language that came from the office off to the side of the reception area. This was followed by a familiar voice of Lottie Applegate. "Calm yourself. They be them bitches that created the problems at Colette's and her folks. Annie done handled that and did what she needed to be done. Besides, Destiny, no way did they alls place any funds down for me to do the makeup, and you and Mama Licorice to do the hair designs. What's the term I'm looking for? It's prig snoot snots." And there was a snorting sound like a pig. This was resulting in the giggles of a teen girl and the roar of laughter that was from Emily, a chuckle from Lottie, and the sound of tiny bells in the joining giggle of Destiny. "Ah, shit, something's up." Ghram started to move. Destiny walked in as she shook her head. Her face was beet red, and it started to turn a deep purple. She blew out a heavy breath, but wore a smile on her beautiful lips. "Only our Dustin could turn my frown upside down with his southern good old boy redneck nonsense. Thank gods for him. Your Aunt Emily and Mama Licorice as well. If they hadn't been there and helped with these three from the high-class world of my shit don't stink and my money talks so nobody walks, and you damn sight need to listen to me 'cause I say so." She rubbed her forehead. "Babe, what's wrong?" The Cougars had an issue with this bridal party. Now these three idiots decided that I and your Aunt Liliana should back them in the pursuit of a wedding gown purchase. Turns out it's the ones my sisters and sister-in-laws found on the internet at the estate sale of a private owner in London. Fuck, babe. Do I need to call a lawyer? Don't worry about it. Anastasia put a damper on that one, and Senor Cordero did not get the chance to escort them from his store. Anastasia ran their asses out of there into the midst of a gathered crowd and made fools of them. "Thank you, Annie." She gave a gentle bow. "I like your style. They are up in arms because they bothered the Cougars today, and Miss Shelley blew a gasket and canceled the entire contract which they never put a down payment on. Nor did they place a payment with Aunt Liliana on what they wanted to order, or one with me for hairstyle and spa day services, or our Dustin for makeup. They assumed they could just walk in and have it done on the morning of the wedding, but they expected we two to intervene with the Cougars' decision to dump them on their butts. Now, where were we?" She blew out a breath. "Me being your date and you being mine in high school. Oh, yes, he was very hot. Dad, you dog. I guarantee you would have been the King Charles Cavalier Spaniel." Storm smiled. "Dad?" She looked from one to another. Ghram grinned and looked over his shoulder. "He was conceived the weekend shit went down." "Oh, Fango. And you just found out Reed's claim is bogus? Then that fuckface. Storm, right?" She nodded. "Yeah, I'm Italian, Mom spokes. Grandfather was born here in the apartment house. Nana, my grandmother, is from northern Italy, Italian and Irish and all Catholic. With some stuff I learned from the Coven of Mandula. What can I say? As kids, we all learned the nasty words in my mother's language. Ghram nodded. We had a little action with the Coven and a photo of Ranella, and a photo that Ranella wanted us to know about. Still don't know how she got it on the new computer as a screensaver, but she was always very good with electronic stuff, especially computer software. He figured it out. We'll have the results of the paternity test by 8 tonight on the website. He pointed to Storm. You need to understand one thing here, Storm. I was his beard, and he was my Merrick or frock. Destiny put one arm around Ghram from behind and leaned down to put her cheek to his. Your dad kept me from getting hassled by guys, and I kept him from being ogled by the girls. I mean, Storm, she stepped back. Take a look, after all. Look at this man. He's still hot. He had the long rocker's hair, one hell of a build, and those green eyes of his. She fanned herself as she stood. If I wasn't a les back then, I would have definitely been interested in more than just the friendship. Smart Alec. Like can usually sense like, Storm. She was being hassled at the school bus stop by several guys the first day. I was driving by and spotted the situation and recognized the asses, and they'd been doing this shit all summer long to her since I moved in with Aunt Chrissy. She smiled. He pulled up in his silver 2000 Porsche Boxer S Vert. She tapped him on the shoulder. This man, I tell you, Storm. The top's down, and I see him watching the shit these asses are pulling. I knew he was new in school. I'd seen him over the summer, sometimes working in the park, other times cruising down River Road past our farmhouse, or he'd stop in Dominic's where I was waitressing. He was always polite and kind of on the shy side. Like Dad says, like knows like. He'd quietly stepped in on a few occasions when he'd been in the pizza place and they had started shit. So he recognized them, but he'd take off before I could thank him. One of the asses from our family, from old families with money, tried to cop a feel. I'd already belted him, but no meant nothing to him, and then he goes and pulls something else with two of his buddies by backing me into a group of trees. We heard the 250 horsepower of the six-cylinder roar as it went through the gears. Dad slams the brakes on about 6 inches away from Chipper Funk's ass. As the car stopped, he revved the motor twice and says, she pointed a finger to his father, "What the fuck is going on here? Sorry I'm late, babe. Your mom told me I pissed you off and you left for the school bus. I'm real sorry, but I had to cash my paycheck, and the bank gave me nothing but large bills. If you want to go to Odette's tonight, the smallest I had in my billfold was a grant, and it's for the tip. The C notes are to pay for the dessert I got planned for after dinner and coffee. Hop in. I'll take you to school. You can belt me in the chops later after I kiss you, like you just did to that jerk. And if, and I mean if, they don't back off, the three of them are going down like the Hindenburg did." In balls of flames, Ghram smiled. Chrissy, your Aunt Chrissy, found my Rebecca supposedly wrecked. The guy thought it had a blown motor. She brought it for $500 after he had it totaled by the insurance company, and she and Ricer rebuilt it for about $1,000. Turned out he left it sit in storage with fuel in the tank. The fuel lines and mostly the injectors were where the engine and injectors were clogged up from the gas turning to almost a lacquer. But as in the case with Chipper, if you don't know Porsche, the 2000 to the 210, the Boxer S convertible all look alike. So Chipper thought it was brand new. So did Skip Weatherby and Hatch Breckenfield. Destiny leaned down and kissed the back of his head. Then she stood and smiled. He stood up out of her and came around the nose, then dropped his head and looked at those three over what looked to be a set of Volan wraparound mirror shades. "Baby, what's going on?" he asked as he put out his hand. Do I need to do what I threatened to do over the summer at your employers and kick all three of their asses?" That made me smile, because when he started on them over the summer, they turned tail and ran. I now know what he'd done, which she then took my hand, and the three of them backed off. If they wouldn't have, we would have rolled, even with me still healing. You don't do that to any lady. Yes, he did, and yeah, I know he would have, and I would have been by his side in that battle. He escorted me to the car, opened the passenger's door, and I slid in and closed the door I slid in and he closed the door to turn to Chipper, Skip, and Hatch as he backed all three up against a large stand of trees and said, "Any of you asses ever bother my lady again, and I'll feed you your cocks, followed by your balls and make you choke on those itty-bitty things." Ghram smiled. "I learned that line from your Uncle LeBou the first time I met him, when Aunt Chrissy's ex and his twin brother had followed us to the garden center, and he saw the asses approach her and she got upset. That's when I thought they'd be a good match, when he faced off against Farouk and then threatened Fassar. Only that was never a threat. LeBou meant business. But his Ugandan African-American accent is so much more cooler than I could ever do, especially when he's in protect mode over his lady or his babies, or Mandula family member. You did sound something like Connery's Bond. I later found out he was imitating Mercury's British dialect with a hint of Irish brogue. He came around the car and I thought, if he hops the door like Tom Cruise, I've had it. All men are asses. But he opened the door and slid elegantly behind the Boxer's wheel. Then we drove off and he blew out a breath and said, "Pensbury, I hope." "Sorry, I'm Graham Calhoun, and don't panic. I'm gay." Those guys were complete asses, and I was raised not to stand there and watch a lady have that kind of shit be done. She came back at me with, "Cool. Thank you. They are asses. Have been since elementary school. I'm Destiny Cranberry, and I am too. A les, I mean." Chipper led the charge as they asked all over school who this new guy was with the brand new showroom porch. Dad walked me to homeroom where we found out we were 8 seats apart by alphabetic last name, and it also turned out we shared business classes. We had lunch together. I introduced him to a couple of friends, and when we told them what happened, They became a band of brothers and watched out for each other's backs with those creeps. Turned out their younger sisters had issues with them too. We had lunch together, and that afternoon, on our drive home, I asked he asked if my folks knew. I told him yes, they were very supportive about me being lesbian, and asked if and then he asked if then I asked if he could stay a few minutes to meet Daddy and Mom while I explained what happened and why he was bringing me home. Ghram nodded and cocked his head to look at her over his shoulder. Her dad, he scared the piss out of me. Dad Jacob was one big Irish-American NYPD captain in special services, that of narcotics. Picture the late actor Brian Dennehy, only much bigger with the true black hair and blue eyes of the Irish. He was livid, but not at us. He told me to call Chrissy and wanted to talk to her and introduce their family to ours. And would I mind taking her to and from school each day? He'd pay for my fuel. I was like, no, you won't, sir. It will be an absolute pleasure to be your escort. I made the call, and they came to Chrissy's. So did Mom and Dad. We've been together in every way ever since. We shared an apartment in Princeton with another friend we met there in Lily Dietz. She opened a spa in Hunt, Iowa. Destiny's valedictorian of their class. But this schmuck graduated before I did. He is valedictorian of his class. But he kept the apartment with us two for 3 more years until we graduated. Then convinced me to open my place here. We own this building together. Best spa in 5 counties in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, although I might amend that statement. How? She looked down at him as she stood with one hand on her hip. And say in the tri-state area, he smiled. East Coast is reaching a little, but she'll get there. She has folks coming from Long Island, Washington, D.C., and as far as Beacon Hill in Boston. He winked as she spun him to face the mirror. She picked up the apron and put it around him. Schmoozer. What are we doing with your hair and Storm's? Ghram glanced at Storm. Her place handles all the styles for Mandula, and it's recommended for every bridal party and formal affair, prom, New Year's Eve, and special occasions by the Cougots, Aunt Liliana, and Coco Chanel. Storm remembers when you first started out, and I had you do the blonde streaks and the extensions. Oh, yeah, she nodded. That was a turn-on, with your own natural blonde going through it. It's about that length now, so you don't need those. But about a 1/4 inch needs to be trimmed off the end so it will keep growing. That will bring it to just about the bottom of your tushy line at your thighs. Not as long as Uncle Silver's, but very sexy and eloquent. Okay, while the highlights take hold, looks like you could use a trim on your beard. You got what the king cats would refer to as a whack-wicket whisker here and there. I know to keep your neck shielded. Storm, what are we doing with your dreadlocks? Storm bit his lips and looked into the mirror as he reached up to touch the tip of one dreadlock banged. His tangles and knots of hair stood out at least 1.5 feet to 2 foot on either side and the top of his head, and hung down his back to below his shoulder blades, in some places to almost the middle of his back. I want it long like Dad's, maybe some highlights, but I've been twisting and knotting since I was 5, especially when I get upset. It's a bad habit. Kathy hated it. Reed hated anything about me or that I did. Hey, kiddo, you're not his, remember? And Destiny, we just found out, Tootie, she and I are going to be doing a relations DNA. I'm Renella's and Dad's kid. Mom adopted me. What? How the hell? Would Mama Licorice have known about this? I'll explain later. But it turns out Tootie quite possibly is Reed's. She does not want to use Berkshire or Carlson, and the last name of Smith-Jones is her mother's bullshit for both her, RCC, and Buddy. The family is going to help her gain custody of the 15-year-old special needs girl and 10-year-old boy. So she asked if she could, she's going to request a last name change through the courts. But that will happen when she marries Thurston W. She can do that through Social Security. There's not going to be a marriage. Dad and Mandela are forbidding it. She gave his ring to Mom to mail back to him, registered and certified and insured by mail once she and Chrissy managed to get it off of her finger. Dad almost had to cut the damn thing. It seems he bought it too damn small for her. He's been hitting her, Storm growled. We, Storm, and I told them they can call me Uncle with Jim and LeBeau, and Chrissy and Beth Anna, they can call Auntie. And Dad and Mom claim them as their granddaughters and grandson. Lean down here, please. Destiny hunched down for him to kiss her cheek and whisper to her, "You're shitting me! Those bastards!" She stood. They did this to her, and then, to top it off, that bastard Polly molested the girl and rolled over on Storm and told Reed that Iceberg and his ladies were who took Storm out of his grasp. And then, oh my God, it was them that, oh Storm, I am so very sorry, sweetheart. But Mandula is getting the other children. I'll let Mom know. Storm, let me explain a second here. Give her a moment to get her faculties together. This might take a sec to get her back on track. Take your time, ma'am. Destiny blinked several times. Okay, Mom and Dad are the owners, and they run the Cranberry House second-hand store and home of thrift. I helped decorate that store for fall of this year. It's a really cool place, Storm announced. I'll tell them you said that. You, she tapped Ghram on the top of the head, have your mom and aunts make a list of what the kids might need. If it comes into the thrift store, you know she'll set it aside for them. Thank you. And kiddo, you're mine. If you want it long, Destiny. Who's the best when it comes to knots and tangles? That kind of stuff that you have on staff. Dreads that aren't really dreads, but are knots and tangles. That one's easy. Your auntie. Mama Licorice. I'll be right back, you two. She headed out the door. Mama Licorice works here, Dad? I thought she was a nurse. Storm twisted a finger in his dreadlock. She is a registered nurse, yes, for trauma. She's retired and has always loved hairstyling, as Aunt Emily said early. earlier. She did all the big hairstyles in the cheerleading squad back then. And when she retired, she needed something to keep her busy. So a few years back, I got to talking to Destiny, and she said she needed someone who could do vintage styles. The big hair stuff from like the 80s, and even go back further into the 60s with the beehive and stuff like that. That was Aunt Lottie to a T, and she asked. It's been great for both of them. She's their den mother here. Chapter 63. Storm watched her leave and looked at his father. Dad, you let Miss Destiny near your throat? You want to hear a little secret about Destiny and I? Sure, Dad, go ahead. He rubbed his beard. She got me to start to grow this in 11th grade a couple of days after I met her. She said that even though I was a badass and didn't need to prove it by having the scars on my throat, that she would challenge to any asshole who wanted to test me, because they felt they had a right to know my history or had read about shit in the newspaper. And there were a lot of big house asses and old families, mostly in Yardley, more so in Yardley Court, Yardley Gardens, and Springfield Gardens, that pulled that type of shit. Great. He stroked his beard. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Some of them are also from Levittown and Fairless Hills. One or two from Morrisville, that thought they could get away with the shit like Chipper, Skip, and Hatch. She was right. By the third week of school, I had a few asses push buttons and try to get my goat. I was backed by the guys she had me make the first day. Well, that was good, right? He shrugged. I answered the call and kicked some ass, and as I grew my beard, she started trimming it, and the shit completely stopped. There were other those, like Errol Donahue and Flynn Sims, that came from the same old families, that were really the best guys you'd ever want to meet. They're the guys Destiny had me meet the first day of school in the lunchroom. Errol is a historical architect. He does the repairs for the Historical Society of Bucks County, and Flynn is a historical researcher and professor in antiques and restoration of furniture. They both know antiques and collect silver and china. Errol specializes in oil paintings, and Flynn's specialty, of course, is furniture. And they help with the inn when I get stuck, or we're going to go to an auction. And your great-great-grandpa, Calhoun, needs their eyes to see a maker's mark. That old buzzard, or his dad and the old man calls him, Pops, is 103 on the day after Christmas, and still is fit as a fiddle. They are antique assessors for insurance companies in their specialties. They have appeared on the Antiques road trip of the tri-state area when they set up different school gyms throughout New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. Dad, that's more than 3 states. Yeah, it is. And they also do New England during the fall. So not everyone who lives in big houses and comes from old money are asses. Just some of them. You get that in all classes of people, and they backed me in a few brawls. He rubbed the side of his face. Yep, I can feel a few out of place longer than the rest. You guys went to college together and shared an apartment? He asked. How did that work? A 3-bedroom for a while. But one night while we were in college, December of the lady's second year, I'd already graduated, but was still living there. I hadn't started the lease purchase with your grandparents on the houses yet, and had the apartment over the garages. Ed and John were still at the guest house at the Berkshires. She went on her first same-sex date with this, well, how the hell do I explain this one to my son? Let me put it this way in my own words and thought. Destiny is elegance, classical, you know? She's a true lady, what a debutante should be. She's my Princess Diana, my heart's rose. He put out his right arm to push up the sleeve to show Storm the rose in the center of a heart of thorns with her name in the middle. This chick was a total dyke, worse than any of those ladies I've ever met. There's a lot of dykish ladies that I like. They act more male than female. They're badasses, but they're nice folks, and yes, they are and have their own ladylike ways. That is perfectly fine. They are beautiful in their own way, both inside and out. They care. This one, though, was more so a real gone bitch. Don't bring this up to Destiny. It wasn't a good sitch, and she got bullied into the date, okay? Storm nodded. Promise, Dad. He raised his hand to stroke his forehead with the thumb and forefinger. Give me a second in thought here, 'cause this bitch that pulled this stunt went after Lily about 10 days later, and there was a second brawl over that. Destiny will talk about that one, because it was us 3 against 5 of them, and the ladies kicked more ass than I did. Storm smiled. That's cool, Dad. So you can brawl like Grandpa can. Storm nodded. So can she when she needs to. Remember, Destiny's a New York Cityer. She's from Manhattan. And there we end the story for today. You had a couple of visits in there from both Chuck and Maggie. You heard them snarl and growl and in their play mood running around like they are as puppies. You heard the growl and grumble from Mouse when they step on her. So, in this being, the mouse says the butler didn't do it. I thank you for stopping by and visiting with us. We will continue the story on. If you enjoyed this, press like and subscribe and come back again. Thank you.